We've been friends for, I've checked it, over 40 years. And our friendship goes a long way and can take us a long way. I'm delighted to see it. I think we live at a time of great promise, but also grave danger.
Welcome to the Light Brigade, and thank you for joining me on Enlightened Path Endtime Scripture Study with bnevo.lightbrigaid. We are about to get into a lesson regarding the times that we're living in. We are going to be talking about the origin of Islam. Anytime we see terrorism, or anytime that we see fighting in the coined Middle East, which is really the sub-Saharan East Africa, the main aggressors and the main antagonizers are the Islamics or the Arabs or Muslims. I wanted to bring this lesson to the forefront so we can know exactly who these people are, where did they come from, and what exactly is their mission? What exactly is it that they're trying to accomplish for centuries of fighting? We're going to find that out today. When we turn on the telelive vision, especially with the news broadcasters, they are casting a broad spell on the world's viewers in terms of what we see. It's almost impossible not to be bombarded with the brutality and the terrible acts these Muslims or Islamics are partaking in. We have been accustomed to their terror, or so-called, for decades. But you see, the media feeds the viewers the illusion that these people are monsters who shoot up and burn villages and decapitate the heads of children. Listen, I'm not saying that most of these groups are not violent, demonic extremists, or some of the allegations are not valid. However, I am fully aware that everything in the media is a tool to deceive and to persuade people to be led in the way of the government's narrative, which is properly coined propaganda. Before we get to know who these people are, their cultures and beliefs, their lineage, and who their ancestors descend from, and who are their ancient descendants, we can do that by starting off in Genesis 16, verse 1 through 4. So to give a brief rundown of what we're seeing here, Abraham, the father of Israel, the grandfather of Israel, has disobeyed Yah and heeding the word of his wife. His wife at the time was seeking to have a child very badly, and she was of old age. She wanted a son. Everyone had a son. She didn't have a son. So she felt that because of her age, she was no longer able to bear children. So she told Abraham to go into the maid. And this is where we'll continue. Genesis 16, verses 1 through 4. And the word of Yah states, now Sarai, now this is before she became Sarah, because Sarai, she never had a child. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, and Abram is before Abraham as well. This is before his name was changed to Abraham, because at this time his seed was not yet planted. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. All right, let me stop there. I need to make a quick correction. On my last video, the one that I just posted, Babylon is Fallen, I wanted to make a correction. I stated that Hagar was an Ethiopian, and I stand corrected. She was actually Egyptian. So I want to clear that up. I said Hagar was an Ethiopian. That was my mistake. She was an Egyptian. All right, so I want to clear that up for people who want to point the finger and want to call out things and expose and say that I'm a false prophet or I'm a false teacher. So I want to clear that up, so therefore there will be no confusion. It's verse 2. And Sarai said unto Abram, behold, now Adonai has restrained me from bearing. I pray you, go into my maid, and it may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. So at this time, Sarai, out of her desperation for a child, has given her maid unto Abraham, for Abraham to lay with her, so therefore they could have a child within the family. Verse 4, and he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived, And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Let's go on to 5. And Sarai said unto Abram, my wrong be upon you. I have given my maid into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Adonai judged between me and you. Now you see, the previous chapter, Yah promises Abram a son. But through the haste of Sarai, wanting a son, she couldn't wait. And again, the woman persuaded him to disobey Yah. He heeded the words of his wife and never spoke it over with Yah. And he committed adultery, although this was before the law. It was considered adultery because Sarai was his wife, but the law was not yet given. So therefore, I believe Yah tolerated, but it was not his original plan. Let's see that polygamy is not the plan of Yah. Although many want to say that there is no law against it, we're going to see that although Yah never said too much about it in those days, we can read between the lines and see that he wasn't too happy about it either. Let's go to Genesis 2, verse 23 through 24. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. You see that? She's a woman. 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. One flesh. Not two flesh, three flesh, four flesh, 100 flesh, one flesh. Yah says the two shall become one flesh. So therefore, he's stating that a man shall cleave unto his wife and have one wife only. So we can clear that up right there. And we can also go to 1 Timothy as well to see what Yah feels about having more than one wife. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because many would like to say that, oh, it was okay, it's acceptable in the Hebrew culture to have more than one wife. I don't believe it is. All right, we're going to go to 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior. So you see, Yah states here in several verses and several chapters that he wants man to have one wife. I believe because having more than one wife is just confusion, and Yah is not the author of confusion. Let's continue back to Genesis 16 with Abram and Hagar. Genesis 16 and we're in verse 3 now, right? Now that Abram has impregnated Hagar, Sarah was furious and jealous. She felt Yah was being impartial unto her, since Hagar conceived and she didn't. Let's go a little bit down. Let's go into verse 10. And the angel of Adonai said unto her, I will multiply your seed exceedingly, that it should be not numbered for multitude. We see that this prophecy has come to pass because the nation of Islam is massive. And we will see that. Let's go to 11. And the angel of Adonai said unto her, behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Adonai has heard your affliction. Verse 12. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren. This describes their wild manner, extremists for war and bloodshed. When I describe Islam and Arabs, I am only referring to the terrorist circuits and the death camps. I'm not referring to the people of the land, the civilization and the civilians. I don't know them, and I can't judge. I'm only going off of the extremists and the warriors and the hunters that come out of this land and that represent and that will die and sacrifice the lives of themselves and the lives of their people or whoever it is in the name of Allah. No, I'm not referring to society of people who are Islamic or Arabs, because I realize not everyone holds these ideologies or acts this way. You also have Arab Christians who get slaughtered every day for their beliefs aside from the wars. The media will have you believe that when you see an Arab with the turban, that they are extremists and they are terrorists. This is propaganda, and this is to stir up confusion. This is what happened around the 9/11. When 9/11 was around, every time we seen Any Arabs with turbans, we turn the other way, or we get scared if they was on a plane or a train. We think they're gonna blow it up, or they're gonna, you know, strap themselves with bombs. See, this is what the media has pumped into our hearts. But when you see the scriptures for what they are, and you see exactly who these people are, then you have a better understanding. This is the main reason for this message, is to have a great understanding of who the Arabs and the Islamic people are. So let's go to Genesis 17, and we are going to go to verses 20 to 23. Here, Father Abraham is asking Yah to allow Ishmael to be accepted before him. Here is the Most High's reply to Abram. Verse 20. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac. All right, let's stop there. Now, Yah didn't hold back any blessings from Ishmael, did he? He said he will bless Ishmael. Due to the fact that Ishmael is Abraham's son, he's going to bless him. He's going to bless him. He said, I will bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you exceedingly. And he said, you also give him 12 princes. Seems as though the 12 princes contrast the 12 tribes of Israel, don't it? And he said, I will make you a great nation. So not only has Yah made Yasharel a great nation, but he made Ishmael a great nation as well with 12 princes. Verse 21, but my covenant will I establish with Isaac. And I'm going to paraphrase here. I will only establish my covenant with Isaac only. Isaac is the only blessed one out of Abraham's loins, which Sarah shall bear unto you at this set time in the next year. You see that? So Yah promised Ishmael 12 princes. So we see here that the nation of Islam is born. There is a big but. This is where the hatred, resentment, and animosity comes from towards Yasharel. This is where Yah draws the line. Remember, Ishmael was born out of defiance and disobedience. They are black like us, but you ever notice how they despise us? Some are even darker, but they hate our guts. You go into a 7-Eleven, or you go into a gas station, or places in which they own or they work. And the moment they see black faces, or they see black people, black kids, black women, their face turns up, or they start to become apprehensive and start to become monitors. They become second pair of eyes, along with the massive amount of cameras they already have in there, anticipating our thieveries. This goes back to the ancient times. They've never liked us. And this is because of the resentment of Ishmael. Growing up, I always wondered where this resentment and hatred came from. I always wondered, how are these people dark like us, but yet they don't like us, and yet they are different from us. And growing up, I always wondered, but now that I go into the scriptures, now that I've matured, see, I believe that that's why Yah uses folks in their more mature ages. He can spread the word through babes and sucklings, as well as he said in the scriptures that the Spirit can use babes as well, use young children and babies. But I feel that even throughout the scriptures, all of his servants were of age. They were of an older age, a more mature age. Not so much elders, but they were of a mature age. That way your mind has settled the immature acts and the immature beliefs and everything that we used to go through, all the foolishness that we did with our lives. When you're mature, you think more rational, you think more logical. But in terms of the Arabs and the Muslims, this is the reason why. It goes back for centuries and centuries and centuries. The resentment towards Yasharel is because they are not Yasharel. Because Isaac, Jacob's father, wasn't even born yet. He wasn't even born yet, and he already resented him. He resented Isaac from the womb. And I'm going to show you the scriptures from Jasher, the book of Jasher, which is in the Apocrypha, the lost books, the books that were taken out of the scriptures by the Catholics, is another mystery that is coming to the forefront in the end days. And I will pull a few scriptures from that. Jacob's father wasn't even born. And when he was born, He was a baby when Ishmael was about in the wilderness. Yah excluded him from being part of the covenant. Even Ishmael, aka Islam, his name describes the kind of people that they are. In the scriptures, Yah called them wild men, and that they would be in conflict with everyone, and everyone in conflict with them. Wild men that were full of violence. Speaking of violence, Yah recently showed me something. The Philistines, Palestine's death camp, Hamas, is in the scriptures as well. Wild men, full of violence, as part of prophecy. See, when you go to the Strong's Concordance and you enter the word violence, you get the word Hamas. Hamas in Hebrew means violence. So if we go to Genesis, and let's go into Genesis 6, you can see that this prophecy has been taking place for centuries and centuries, but now it's getting to the point of no return, and I believe that it's coming to its overflow of Hamas. Everything happens for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. Everything happens. Nothing is by chance. The fact that Yah is showing you this is not a coincidence. He's showing you these things to get us ready and to prepare us for the massive amount of deception and a massive amount of witchcraft and black magic that's going to be poured upon this nation. All right, so we in Genesis 6, verse 11. And the earth also was corrupt before Yah, and the earth was filled with Hamas. Hamas. Let's just look at 12. And Yah looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. But remember how Yah says that in the days of Noah, that when he returns, it will be like the days of Noah, and it will be like the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. You notice how he refers back to the first events, the first plagues and disasters in the early stages of the book, in the early ages of the book. It all comes back around. Prophecy is past, present, and future. What was done in the past will be done in the present, in the future. Nothing is new under the sun, Solomon said. There is nothing new under the sun. And we see that. Hamas is terrorizing the world right now. We are aware of this, that Hamas is terrorizing the world right now. But also, that's not only what we see. We also see, if you go deep into the scriptures, but I'm not going to say if you go deep, because you're not going to find this unless you're looking for it. And again, Yah is revealing all of these things to me because it's the end times. He said, in the end days, I shall show you a mystery, and all of these mysteries are coming to pass. He also showed me, we see that Gaza was prophesied in the scriptures several times as well. All naysayers' mouths are sealed closed shut now. These groups have been named in the scriptures all these years, and everything is coming to the light now. We are getting much closer to the last days. In Daniel, he said knowledge shall be increased. Let's go to Amos. We can just see a quick example of Gaza and the significance of Gaza in the scriptures in the end days. So we're going to go to Amos chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Thus said Adonai, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. So we see that Gaza had their hand in captivity of Judah, and they were delivered up to Edom. But look what it says here in 7. But I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, which will devour the palaces thereof. Let's go to 8. And I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and him that hold the scepter from Ashkelon. And I will turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines, Palestine, shall perish, says Adonai Yahuwah. All right, so these names, Ashdod, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into Ashkelon, and I'm going to get into Ekron. And we already know the Philistines is Palestine. He said they shall perish, says Adonai Yahuwah. In this program, I'm going to break down a lot of the names, and we're going to see a lot of the names and the reason for the names, and we'll see exactly who these people are in the scriptures. The same names that we see currently taking place, like out of these people, these Arabs, the Islamics, the names, we're talking like, you know, the different nations and countries, they're in the scriptures. Ancestral names. ancient names, but we're going to break them down in modern form through the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yah and his aid. Yah aids in everything. But remember what he says. He says that we are just vessels, but the power of the excellency is of him. He just uses us to produce his excellency. So as we see, the Arab nation is humongous and massive, just as Yah promised Abraham. We also see, because of their nature, they are wild by nature. They're wild men. They're the wild men of the East. But you see, Father Abraham, he remarried to a woman after Sarah's death. Father Abraham remarried another woman named Keturah. Let's see this woman Keturah. And through Keturah, more of the Islamic family members were born. All right, Keturah is in Genesis, and we're going to go to chapter 25, and I believe it's the first verses, 1 through 4. We're going to meet Keturah. Then again, Abraham took a wife. Now, as you see now, Abraham's name is Abraham because he's a father of nations. Before his name was Abram, but now because he's a father of nations, his name is Abraham. Then again, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zimran, Ikshan, Medan, Midian, that's the Midians, the Persians, Ishbak, and Shua. Ikoshan begot Sheba. Sheba is sub-Saharan, East Africa. Dedan, and sons of Dedan were Asherim, and Letashim, and Lemim. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, Epher, Hanok, and Abada, Alda. And all these were the children of Keturah. And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. But unto the sons of the concubines, which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son while he yet lived, eastward unto the east country. You see that? So he sent away the concubine sons away from Isaac. Isaac is the blessed one. Isaac is the promised. These are not. Ishmael and his brothers are not. They're his half brothers, but they're not part of the promise. So he sent them out towards the east country in which they inhabit today. Middle East is what was coined by the Europeans. But what they really want to say is East Africa, the sub-Saharan East Africa. You know, it's funny how they deceive us, but yet through the years we don't think nothing about it. We always the Middle East, and when they put Middle East, it just makes you think of just Arabs, of just Muslims, no one else. You know, as if they have their own land, as if they're their own continent. No, they're from the continent of Africa. They're from the continent of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the previous name of Africa. They pull the wool over our eyes. They give us West Africa, right? They give us North Africa, which is Egypt and Morocco. They give us South Africa, of course, right? We know that the Europeans have conquered South Africa and they dwell there now. They're the majority of the people. Can you believe that? They are the majority of the people in Africa, the Europeans. So they give us North Africa, they give us South Africa, and they give us West Africa. What happened to East Africa? East Africa turned into the Middle East. They don't want us to know that whole land is Africa, which means that Israel or Yasharel is in Africa. What was done in the dark shall be seen in the light, and what was said in the air or in the closets shall be declared on top of the housetops. Amen. Remember, Yah did say that he will multiply Abraham's seed in abundance. Just as Yasharel, Ishmael is a major nation. You see, but the major difference with these set of children is that aside from Sarai, or now Sarah, they are not of the covenant. The atrocities towards the Hebrews at the hands of the Arabs have been undocumented for the centuries. The very first slave traders were in Bosnia. The Slavs were in captivity as well. This is where the term slaves derived. Many are unaware that in the 1st and 2nd AD, these brutal men of the East, these wild men of the East, were the world's first slave traders before the Europeans. Yeah, you heard me. You heard me.
But how many recall that Arab slavers were the first and last in modern times to ship millions of Africans out of the continent as slaves? The Arab history of anti-black racism predates European anti-black racism by several centuries. The early Islamic Empire exhibited all the characteristics of anti-black racism, and blacks suffered the lowest form of bondage. Europeans took photographs of chained black African slaves in Arab slave trading vessels on the east coast of Africa in the 1880s. Slavery persisted openly in Saudi Arabia and other Muslim countries in the latter half of the 20th century, 100 years after slavery was abolished in the United States. As late as the 1960s, African Muslims still sold slaves when they arrived on pilgrimages, as a way to finance their pilgrimages. Arab nations lagged far behind the rest of the world in abolishing slavery. Saudi Arabia and Yemen in 1962, United Arab Emirates in 1963, Oman in 1970. However, unlike the rest of the Arab nations, hereditary racial slavery persists in Mauritania, despite multiple official attempts to abolish it. In 1981, by presidential decree, Mauritania became the last country in the world to abolish slavery, but no criminal laws were passed to enforce the ban. Under international pressure in 2007, the Mauritanian government passed a law allowing slaveholders to be persecuted. However, that law has rarely been enforced. Far more anti-slavery human rights activists have been prosecuted than the handful of Mauritanian white masters. In addition, slavers are offered compensation for freeing the enslaved, while the victims of the brutality are offered nothing. In 2015, under international and some domestic mobilization pressure, the Mauritanian government created 3 special courts to prosecute slavery, but so far they have only tried very few cases. However, that's just not all about this oddly unique sect of slavers. The Arab slavers, at some point in history driven outrageously by their odd ambition for economic power and human control, had their African male captives subjected to unimaginable suffering and exploitation. Castration. Yes, you heard correctly. It does not detract from the fact that the trade in human beings was unspeakably hideous. In the Americas, slaves were allowed to marry, though their children could be sold off like puppies right before their eyes. But what happened to the blacks enslaved by the Arabs? Arabs castrated.
The Arabs enslaved, tortured, mutilated, castrated all of the black males that they caught from the coast of West Africa. It's fair to say that death is in their heart for Hebrew and the entire nation of Yasharel. This hatred runs deep in the soul for centuries. Historians have stated that more than twice of slaves and brutal torture has taken place at the hands of the Arabs than Spain, Portugal, and Europe combined. So when we see the horror occurring in the Arab nations, we can see why now, can't we? It's all a family feud. Now it's payback and judgment must occur. Ishmael hates Yasharel. Esau hates Yasharel. These are our tormentors. We have inherited Jacob's promise through the covenant made with Father Abraham. This is the reason for our hatred. Ishmael and Esau are excluded from those promises, so they must prevail through the way of Hamas and bloodshed in hopes of destroying as many of us as possible. Many Hebrews have also turned to their idols and have been converted to Islam. This scripture describes the idolatry Israel partook in by worshiping the sun towards the east, which is the tradition of the current Muslims. Let's go we'll find this in Ezekiel, and we'll find it in Ezekiel 8, verse 14 through 16. The word of Yah speaks. Then he brought to me through the door of the gate of Adonai's house, which was towards the north. So let's highlight that. Yah is towards the north of worship. The north means heavenward. When we worship, we're to worship towards the heavens. Okay? So I just want to put that out there. I just want to just show that real quick, make a point of that. So he brought me to the door of the gate of Adonai's house. Adonai's house. His house will be worship. His house is where we worship into, his throne. So when we worship, it's reaching his house through the way of angels and through the way of incense. The scent of incense is prayers. So as we pray, it ascends up to him. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz. Who's Tammuz? Tammuz is the Egyptian deity, is the Egyptian goddess in whom they used to worship, Tammuz. Then said he unto me, have you seen this, O son of man? Turn yet again, and you shall see greater abominations than these. This is showing man in his state of worship. He's showing him this in the spirit. This is man in a state of worship. So Yah is showing him what we do during worship and where our prayers are reaching. He said, are you seeing this? He's asking him. He said, hey, Ezekiel, you taking a look at this, man? You see what these people are doing? He said, and you will see greater abominations than these, as if this is not enough. It's verse 16. And he brought me into the inner court of Adonai's house. This is the inner court. So he's bringing them closer to the throne. And behold, at the door of the temple of Adonai, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of Adonai. Now, you see what I'm saying here? Their backs are turned towards the temple of Adonai. So instead of worshiping towards Adonai, they have their backs turned and their faces towards the east. And they worship the sun. You see that? And they worship the sun towards the east. Yah is furious. This, brothers and sisters, is the birth of Islam. The moment that they started to worship towards the east with their backs towards the temple of Adonai is the moment that they let Adonai know they are not fond of him, because they know that he is not fond of them. They know that they're not part of the promise of Yasharel. They know that. So just as Esau knew that he lost his birthright and he lost his blessing, they are furious with Yasharel. Just think of a whole bunch of family members, right? And there's this one child in the whole family that the mother and the father adores openly, doesn't hide it, in the front of all the children. When it's time to eat, they get the biggest plates. When it's time to have dessert, they get the biggest dessert, and they get the dessert handed to them. The other ones have to go and get it, but they get it handed to them, hand-fed to them. They're the prince, while the rest have to watch the prince bask in the glory of their mom and dad, who are the king and queen. Imagine, so this is what they're going through, and this has stemmed from ancient times up until till today, and it will never cease until Yah comes back and depletes them from the face of the earth. I hate to say it like that, but that's the only way it's going to stop. That's the only way that the Hamas is going to stop. 17. Then he said unto me, have you seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah? You see that? The house of Judah, that they commit the abominations which they commit here. For they have filled the land with violence. For they have filled the land with Hamas, and returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. You know, when you put the branch to your nose, you're smelling it as if there's no big deal. It's nothing. It's no big deal to them. Listen to what Yah says. Pay close attention. I hope you guys are paying attention. 18. Therefore will I also deal in fury. My eyes shall not spare. My eyes shall not spare. Neither will I have pity. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. Now, people who don't know Yah is looking at him like, why is he so mean? Why is he so angry? You don't understand what has been done to his people over the centuries and over the generations. When you truly understand what was done to Yasharel and what was done to Judah, then you'll see exactly where this anger comes from. And this is nothing. This is just a drop in the bucket of his anger. Please, this is nothing. This is a joke compared to the wrath that he is going to release upon the nation of Islam, aka Ishmael, and Esau, aka Edom. Yasharel is going to have their punishment as well, because not because just because you are your lineage is of Yasharel means you're going to get a pass. By no means. You don't follow his word and you don't walk in his ways and you don't obey his word, you're going to fall with the heathen. You're going to fall with Edom, and you're going to fall with Ishmael. So don't get that in your head. Don't think just because I'm a Hebrew, I'm cool. No. You got to go through this. You got to endure to the end, and then you should be saved. All right, where we going here? So now we see where many Hebrews have turned to their idols and have been converted to Islam, which is a shame. And again, this is no slight or this is no stab at any of the Islamics or any of the Arabs. I'm just stating scriptural to the people of Yasharel and to the grafted in Gentiles. Anybody else on the outside of that who takes offense to this, then I'm sorry that you feel that way. But I am not, my intentions are not to offend. My intentions are to teach and to allow folks to realize and to see the truth and to weed away and to peel away the layers and to basically take the scales off of our eyes so we can see. So we'll be able to be well prepared when the time of evil hits. We won't be sitting around idle and like running around like a chicken with his head cut off, or like a ostrich with his head in the sand. Nah, we gonna be prepared and we gonna be ready. We gonna be ready. At least I hope so. At least I hope I'm gonna be ready. I mean, Yah's giving me the courage now, but you don't know until the time comes. So we've come to the conclusion of this message, the origin of Islam. I wanted to give you a brief but detailed description of the people of Islam, which is Ishmael, the Arabs. Because as I said, all we know is what we see. We just see the stereotypical images. We don't know these people per se, and we don't know their beliefs. We don't know their traditions. We're going to get into that on part 2 of Origin of Islam. We'll get into the names. We'll get into the biblical names, and we'll get into the origin of their traditions, their beliefs. But until then, Yah's willing. Yah bless you and your families. Shalom.